everyone, all Lindau alumni. Um, Thank you for joining us here for this workshop on data storytelling. I'm excited to welcome Sibei Lin from our expert today. She's a academic partnership associate with ThinkCell Software based in Berlin, and she will give us some insight today into how you can turn data into well-structured slides, well-structured presentation that not only presents your data, but also tells a story to ideally convince your audience, be it for science, communication purposes, business purposes. I think is applicable to a lot of areas. And there will be an opportunity to ask some questions at the end. And anytime you have some questions, you can just put them in the chat and we'll get to them. And a recording of this will also be made available through the Lindau Alumni Network. And now I won't say too much in advance, but instead hand over to Sibei. And I'm looking forward to your presentation. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Christoph, for the introduction. So, like you said, my name is Sibei from the ThinkCell Software, currently sitting in the Berlin office. So, thank you all so much for joining today. I would say good morning, afternoon, and evening, depending on where you are. So, for today, I would say the main chunk would be on data storytelling. So, what it is, it's really no matter which backgrounds you're coming from. I do believe that there is value, especially in today's settings, that you will came across a situations where you have to present in more of a business setting. So for today, it's all about showing you how a standard business presentations should be structured to make sure that the ideas, the insights that you have will be communicate properly to the audience. And then, of course, I'm going to drop some words, a very quick overview about ThinkCell, the company, the tool itself, and what we're currently doing. And then last but not least, there will be a Q&A sessions. So throughout the presentation, if you have any questions, if anything's unclear, you're more than welcome to just leave a quick comments in the chat box and we will make sure to address that and get back to you towards the end of today's session. So really, when it comes to data storytelling, there are three things that we're talking about today. So the first one is the narrative, essentially the story part. How do we actually tell a story that people can understand, that people will act on, and then you can push them to do the things that you would like them to do. The second part, of course, more on the operational side. For a good story, we want to have a clear structure and we want to have a clear communications on that. And then last but not least, just stressing the important points when it comes to crafting these kind of presentations, which is to make sure that you keep everything simple, to have it focus on your main ideas. So really the three things that we are going to look at for today. So first thing first, how do we craft a narrative? Before we started, I would say that every good stories come from these four important questions over here. First, why questions. Why do you want to tell your stories? There's always a purpose behind it. What would be the success definitions? What's your own metrics to it? Is your data story aimed to convince people? Is your data story aims to change people's mind, reaffirm something they already know before? What would be your definitions of success after telling this? The audience we're looking at, and also the how, the format. Are you doing it virtually? Is presentations the best way to do it? What would be a good channels per se to transmit it through? So these are the questions that I would encourage you to ask yourself before setting off and crafting a narrative. After that, this is a classic frameworks that you see. If you think about it, probably every best-selling novels, all the Hollywood movies, everything every good stories, if you boil it down to the essence, it usually contains
כל
these four elements.
הכבוד.
Hello? Yeah, so if you're in the call, it would be great. We would appreciate it if you can just mute yourself, unless it's something urgent. If not, you could also leave it in the chat. All right, so going back to our SCQA framework over here, I think it's quite self-explanatory. Start out with the situation, so common knowledge, something that everybody understands, setting up the background, the stage, and with all these kind of backgrounds, informations comes with a complication. So really the twist to your story. Is it a problem, a change, or tensions that have occurred based on the frameworks that you've laid out? The questions, so you can see that it's a little bit of dotted lines here, meaning that sometimes it's pretty much embedded in the complications. Pretty obvious. You don't necessarily need to clearly lay it out or address it, but it's already there. Because of the complications, the next step is obviously what are we going to do about it? And then obviously the gist of it, or in most cases, why you would even set off doing this kind of presentation, is that you want to have show your answers to the particular complications that's happening. So really the answers, providing a solutions, the main recommendations, these are the most, I would say, like common use case and the business presentations of why we're doing it in the first place. So really the SCQRA framework to set off your narrative. Of course, I know a lot of people have heard about different frameworks over here depending on which discipline you're coming from. So here are just some more examples of what it looks like. But we would argue that the SCQR framework is the very, very basic ones that really covers all of it over here, just the difference in names. But as you can see here, the similarities that they all cover the situations, the complications, the answer we're seeking for. And for pyramid principles, of course, that's something that we're going to touch upon later as well. But key idea here is really the SCQR a framework. It's so useful that you don't necessarily need to look further and do like a deep dive into, all these 100 different frameworks out there. This is something that is pretty bulletproof, that has been used in most cases when it comes to structuring a good story and a great starting point for crafting your narrative. All right, so how do we actually do it? Pretty simple examples. October might not be the best time to present it, but let's just imagine that we are looking at our friend's Olivia's ice cream shop over here. Great at making ice cream. However, she is not necessarily so competent in answering her business questions with data. That's why we are stepping in to help. So going back to our frameworks over here, we have the case that we're looking at for Olivia, which is she is owning a successful ice cream shop. But then that comes to complications that the sales has been declining for the last few months, something I don't think any business owners would like to see for their business. And then what are we going to do about it? So quick suggestions over here. In order to boost sales, we decided that the Frosty Heavens needs to have a longer opening hours to stabilize the sales. So just a quick examples to show you how a clear stories could be told. You have your situations, the questions, the complications, what has changed, and then the solutions that we are offering over here. So a very clear intro over here. So you might ask, are we going to then start every single narratives in these particular sequence? The situations, we give out the complications, and then at the end, we offer the resolution. And the simple answer is no, this is not necessarily the exact sequence that we have to follow for every single narrative. And one of the big reasons for that is that we are telling the stories not necessarily always to the same audience, the same stakeholders. As you can see with this particular axis over here, on the vertical front, we have the attitude of your stakeholders. So in an ideal world, of course, you want to have friendly audiences that came in and are already very receptive of whatever that you're trying to tell them. However, in real life, that might not be in the case. You might have some quote unquote hostile audience, not necessarily that they hate you personally, but that they might not be very acceptive of what you're about to tell them. And then on the x-axis front, we have the awareness. It's going from low to high, meaning that that's your stakeholders that go from that they know nothing about your topic to they already have a very solid knowledge on the things that you're about to cover. So what it looks like, going back to our narrative frameworks, and then taking our stakeholders into considerations. This is how it looks like. If you're going to have some friendly audience that don't know much about what you're going to talk about, you could really just start instead with the resolutions, with the answers you have, and then bring them in, giving them the scenarios, giving them the situations, laying the groundwork, going into the evidence versus if you already have stakeholders that know a lot about the topics you're going to talk about, um, as you know, that's something that you could already start with because everybody's or you could just assume that everybody's already on the same page regarding the challenge, the questions that we are all looking at. And at the same time, if you have more of a hostile crowd, you might not want to just throw your resolutions or your answers out there because that's something that they might not take in instantly, but rather start with the situations, start with your evidence, and kind of go forward and craft your way towards the resolutions over here. So really going back again to the questions that we want to ask ourselves before the narratives, the audience that you're looking at must be something that you need to take into considerations. So just some examples. And some recommendations on, kind of the before you give out that presentation, something that you could do as well to kind of help you ease them into delivering a good story. And then I would say that that is what we would like to start off with an intro to your narratives. You want to make sure that it's very clear, it's for following the SQA framework and also taking into the considerations of the stakeholders you're presenting to. So now we have a good, I would say, narratives laying down. The next step would be really to build up the structure of your story. So that would come to the second part that we're talking about today, which is the structure and how you would communicate it. So here we have, I would say, two rather different way of structuring your communications. The first one, probably most of you are more familiar with the one, what we call the funnel principles over here. So really bottom up, starting out with your analysis, with your findings, and then trickling down to the key message or rather conclusions of what is going on versus what we would say would be the gold standard in business, which is the pyramid principle. That is the top-down structures started out with a key message and then trickling down, going into the results, the interpretations, the full-on analysis. So why is it the gold standard in business? I would say the main reason is just imagine that you're in the room presenting to C-levels Or if you are, kind of doing a pitch in front of um, some kind of investment funds and you only have 3 minutes for that, and within that 3 minutes, their attention span is probably just 30 seconds or something along the line. You don't want to spend the big chunk of your time going into the analysis first because you know that then they're losing their attention. So they're no longer really listening to you. That's why in business settings, when it comes to presenting, it's always, I wouldn't say like in all cases, but usually a good idea to already start off with the key message, get that through the audience, and then going off with the analysis. So really, if you're thinking about it from a science presentations, we need to sometimes think of flipping it for business settings into the pyramid structure over here. So again, going back to our ice cream examples over here, this is something that um, could look like it starting off with the conclusions. Again, we're extending the opening hours. Why is it so? We have our supporting arguments over here, and then going under at the bottom of the pyramid would be our basic facts and analysis to kind of bringing the stories together and then supporting the main key arguments we have over here. So that would be the pyramid structures over here. And then at the bottom of it, when it comes to analysis, you want to always follow also the MECE principles or at least check it with the MECE principles. So think about it. I think it's quite straightforward with the puzzles illustrations over here. You want your data stories to be a full, completed, finished puzzles. So what it looks like, first of all, you don't want to have pieces that are scattering around. So arguments that you haven't brought into the story yet. And then, of course, the missing items will not help you in terms of completing the puzzle, the stories. And then last but not least, make sure that you're not looking at overlapping items, meaning overlapping arguments over here in your storylines being repetitive. So really mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive. Um, Easy to understand, I would say, rather in the puzzle illustrations here. So no scattered, no missing items, no overlapping. There you have your coherencies when it comes to structuring your argument. Again, bringing in the examples here so you can see that what it counts as, and let's say, an overlapping arguments over here, or you have here on the right-hand side the different points that are going from a different angles, addressing a different issues over here. So how do we, let's say, make sure that we have the pyramid structures? A couple of ways to do it. First one, door and dash. So really just jot down, um, I would say, the main points and arguments in each of your slides, kind of read through it as an overview outline to see, checking if it's a pyramid structure is in there, the frameworks in there, the MISI principles has been aligned, pens and papers the old school way, or if you already have your deck ready and you would like to do a quick check on that, always you can always go to the outline view for a quick and easy overview of what's there in each slide and if they're following the principles to kind of build up these clear presentation storylines over here. So again, this is when you finish structuring your structured. It's always important to do your final 1 or 10 or 100 flip through to make sure that everything stays coherent and it flows in a sense. Right. So just bringing what we have said all together. As you can see here, starting off with asking yourself the questions, the why, the who, what, and how, and then the framework principles to make sure that you have a coherent and convincing storyline. Macy's to make sure that the argumentation part is logical and ready to go, and then this pyramid structures that includes the key arguments as well as the analysis to support the insights over here. All right, so that I would say would be the standard structures to build up a business presentations. And when it comes to actually delivering and have the message across, we have this quote from our old friend Steve Jobs. Not sure if the new iPhone is following the same principles, but I think it's a pretty important one, which is that simple can sometimes be the hardest things, and really something that we all need to work on to make sure that we're thinking clean and keeping things simple. What it means when it comes to business presentations, it's, I would say, pretty simple. You want to have one idea per slide. Um, this is something I would say pretty straightforward. We all know what it means. In executions, it can be very difficult, especially if you're explaining around a more complex topics over here, but always a good principle to abide to. And a good way to ensure that you only put one idea per slide, I would say it's focused on crafting a good action title. So action title, what it is really that one key message in each and every slide that you have over here. A lot of people, or at least I've seen it in a lot of cases, that for some of the slides, people would put the mere descriptions of what's going on in that slide in the action titles. However, this is not the place where you should be putting it here. For example, here, ice cream sales 2022, that should be something that belongs to the subtitle, but rather action title, we want to leave it to something that's a little bit more valuable, which is really our insights, our main ideas over here, which is that we want to extend the opening hour for the ice cream shop. Why? Here's our reasons over here. So that's the action title. So how do we get to this main action titles? It could be 5 times, it could be less or more, but the key idea here is that you would like to start off with the initial problems or observations you have and continue to ask yourselves the why questions. All right, so why is it dropping? What's the reason behind it? All the way until we're getting to the point to the actionable insights over here. So we're fully explaining the why, and we're also giving a suggestions, a solutions to solve that particular problems. So that's the insight that we're looking for. So just a couple more examples, different scenarios over here. So you could have your data in the observations, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it has some meanings to your audience, doesn't necessarily mean that it's an actionable thing that people can immediately jump on versus an insight and how it should look like over here. And once you have your insight, last things that you want to do to translate it into your action titles over here would be to keep it concise. So really we have our maybe like 3, 4 lines inside. Think about way to kind of cut it down while keeping the meanings over here. So just some couple more principles to make sure that you're translating the insights into a refined action titles over here. All right, so now we have our action titles. Let's look at the 2 other things that should usually be put on a single slides over here as the content. So subtitle, we already touched upon it, describing what's going on. And then last but not least, you want to have the content that is supporting back to what you're saying in the action titles in the first place over here. All right. And then when it comes to the content itself, I would like to also introduce you to the concept of data ink ratio. What it is really is the ink that you're using to present your actual data over here versus the total ink you use in entire display for the very, I would say, simple idea that the more you're putting on the slide, the less people are going to really listening to you or trying to understand or figuring out what's actually going on there. That's why it's always very important to make sure that you're communicating your insights with less ink and to, when it comes to the presentation, delete any kind of chart junks that you might have when it comes to putting a chart as your content. So what it would look like when it comes to simplifying the content is here we have, I said before that Olivia is not necessarily so good at doing business presentation, and this is what I mean over here. So this is something that she has put together to illustrate the current sales in the ice cream shop over here. And first thing first, I would say just to not hurt everyone's eyes, we want to put it into, first of all, a 2D chart over here. So it's a little bit easier for us to see what's going on. But again, as you can see, there's a lot of chart junks that we're mentioning over here. Why do we need the grid lines? It has no meanings. Why do we need to see all these different colors? I mean, it makes sense from a flavors perspective, but we really do not need that to understand what's going on with these cells. That's why we are getting rid of all of those things that we just mentioned, the different colors. The grid lines are super unnecessary over here. But again, as you can see here, we still have a lot of data points. Not sure what I'm looking at. I'm just seeing a lot of delicious flavors instead as an audience at first sight. That's why I would say that since the idea is that we want to know about the best selling flavors, we can group then the not relevant data point, which is the least selling flavors, into the other options. So we have a way more clean looking chart over here. But again, still something that is a little bit hard to read at first glance. That's why we're doing a final cleanup over here. So from a charts perspective, I would say it's pretty easy to read. 10 seconds in, you already see that, hey, vanilla and chocolate would be the two best selling flavors over here. We have it, um, you know, organized properly. In this sequence, we also have it highlighted. So make sure that it's dummy proof. Everybody can look at it, lay their eyes on it, and know exactly what's going on. And then from a slide perspective, this is something that we also talk about. So you want to have a action titles over here. So what's going on? What are we doing? The subtitle showing, hey, this is the contents that we're showing to support our arguments or our suggestions over here. And then last but not least, a very clear chart as your arguments, as your contents over here on this particular slide to illustrate that one idea you're putting out there. Of course, this should not and will not be the only solutions. There's tens of millions different chart types that you could select to communicate this particular idea. This is just an example of how they could look like when it comes to how we communicate this particular insight over here. All right, so that would be the data storytelling parts that we're looking at. Just to wrap it up, starting off with, I would say, from a more of a content perspective, how do you craft your framework, the narrative, going through the structure and communications part. You were thinking about the stakeholders, which is essentials in business settings and in general in different type of presentation settings. And then what's pretty particular about a business presentations will be the pyramid structures. So the key message first, you want to put it out there and also to keep everything as simple and as easily digestible as possible. Right. So I hope that that's helpful. If you haven't heard about how to structure the presentation before, you hear it today, or if you already know, you can recall some of the contents or find some similarities in the things that we have mentioned. And for today, since I'm coming out of ThinkCell, I think it's natural that I'm going to also give it a 5 minutes talk on the company itself. So ThinkCell started off as a startup in Berlin. Our founders actually, when they were university students, did their internship at one of the big consulting firms, McKinsey, before, where they do realize that there's a blocker for a lot of consultants to have a good tool to create slides, like good presentation slides. And it started out the business idea of creating a slide making tool, which is ThinkCell. So really what it is that it is an add-in sitting in the Microsoft system. So your PowerPoint and Excel to help you to generate charts and make presentations. So everything we've talked about before about how to make slides. This is more about a tool that on an operational levels to save the time when it comes to actually making the slide itself, and of course to make sure that the slides look professional and ready to go. So fast forward to today, I would say that it is definitely one of the industry standard tool that's used by over 1.3 million business professionals worldwide, different companies. Started out obviously in management consulting, where slide is essentially the products that people are looking at, but nowadays also you see a lot of think so in banking, finance, institutions, industry, as well as tech and startups over here. So in terms of the departments I'm in right now, it actually have nothing to do with these commercials over here. So what we do at the ThinkCell Academics is that essentially we give out the ThinkCell license for free to everyone in academia, so be it students, student clubs, universities, so that involves all the staff and faculties. The idea behind it is that if you remember this logo page, is that we believe that we want to touch and empower the students and already teach them how to use the tool before they go into their future job in one of these corporates, which is our business partners, and actually start using things so in a business settings. We see it as more of a goodwill basis thing. So we are giving them the things that they need to use and one less things for them to learn in the future as well. And then on top of the free licenses, obviously we're doing trainings as well to help to get everyone on board with things so, and also the slide writing part as well. Um, I mean, the obvious one would be the business students. They need to do a lot of presentations already in school, slide writings. But interesting enough, I've also given a lot of these sessions to students from different disciplines, natural science, engineering students, because nowadays, you know, if they would like to be a working professionals, chances are doesn't matter which study programs, which industry they're going into, they will came across situations where they would have to stand in front of someone to do a business presentation. That's why I would say that both doing a proper business site presentation as well as slide writings are really essential skills to have. And then kind of extending our academics offerings over here, we also host case competitions. We're currently doing one right now. So if you're teaching and you have students, highly encourage them to check them out to help students kind of build up their resumes and already practice how to crack a case and how to do a proper presentations over here. So that's what we're doing currently at the ThinkCell Academics. As for the product itself, currently we have one single product which covers all these different functionalities, starting out with the ThinkCell libraries with all the resources. the core, what we call it, the ThinkCell core to create charts and presentations and different tools to make your life easier when it comes to creating a presentation. So again, the ThinkCell ribbon tabs over here, if you haven't installed it, you will see it in PowerPoint, which follows the idea of a data storytelling. So these are the different steps you want to take when it comes to crafting a data storytelling and the respected tool to help you to speed up that particular process. So what it is, actually, I'm going to exit the presentations to show you very quickly how it looks like. Within the ThinkCell library, there will be different templates over here where you can insert it so you don't have to start everything from scratch. Um, different diagrams over here, dashboards. So everything pretty much you would need to start off building a presentation. And the great thing about these templates is that it will always auto style match what you have currently on in your PowerPoint in terms of, the font, the coloring, so you don't have to spend extra time in terms of formulating it yourself. And then on top of that, some open source images and icons that you can easily bring in to the presentations. And in terms of the chartings of things, so over here, we try to keep it simple. So really just two menus to order either the appearances of the chart or the context menus to bring in the different functionalities when it comes to chart building. And you might ask, we can also build chart with PowerPoint. So what is different about these things about charting? Just a quick illustrations over here. When it comes to building a standard waterfall chart, there's different things that you either are not able to do with a PowerPoint functions. For instance, you can't really stack the segments together going below zeros. You have to do something manually, or you can do it, but it requires a lot more click versus with ThinkCell, the process is definitely streamlined, meaning that a lot of the necessarily things when it comes to chart creations will be included in there. So that's one thing. It's easier to make certain types of chart with ThinkCell. Another thing is there are also chart types that you can only make with ThinkCell, but not with the native PowerPoint function. For instance, the Gantt chart over here, that is part of the ThinkCell chart options over here that you can just bring in easily a Gantt chart, which you can set then automatically the date, for instance, over here within the calendars to bring in different dates for your Gantt chart and also everything else that you can simply modify it over here or for the responsible columns bringing in to keep track of the products or the projects that you're currently working on. And I would say that is the main products that ThinkCell is looking at right now. And then looking into the future, what is in the making right now would also be the AI assistants from ThinkCell, the Aspirine AI assistants. Full disclaimer, I don't think we're there yet in terms of a full-on AI tool that you could just plug in the prompt and then AI would pretty much make a presentation for you. But rather, what we have currently with the Aspirine AI assistants is something as such. So it is a bundle of different tools that's currently within the market, but simply more secure and GDPR compliance over here that we have the Gen AI chat on the side where you will be able to ask the questions to your ChatGPT, the translation tool from DeepL, text assistance, and then last but not least, this is not pulling out from AI, but for those who are working more with business data, it's the public companies data here from Morningstar or more statistics from Power Through Statistics over here. For instance, if I would like to see how Mercedes-Benz is doing right now. I could just put it in, looking at the annual revenues as I select. Could always insert a chart over here. This will not be coming out of AI as the name suggested, but rather coming out from the Morningstar database. And this is fully integrated in the sense that once you have the data, it is automatically being shown as a think cell chart as well over here. Right? So this is, I would say, in the making, but you can already test it out the AI assistance from ThinkCell. Of course, due to time reasons, and I also think that now is not a place for me to do a full-on think cell demonstrations. But we have a lot of the resources out there, either on YouTube or our website, when it comes to think cell functionalities, if you are interested in that. All right. So I would say that's all from my side today, and then I will go on to the Q&A sessions to see what we have in the chat box. But before that, I just have one simple ask for today's sessions that you answer our survey so we know what to do, what you like or dislike about the sessions that we're doing. It's really simple. Takes 30 seconds, only 6 questions over here. And I would really appreciate it if you can share your feedback with us over here. The QR code would lead you to the same survey, but I will also now put the survey link in the chat as well.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation, Sibei. And just as you wrapped up, we got the first questions in the chat. Thank you. That's very, very informative. I already took some notes of what I have to change about my slides I'm preparing at the moment.
Mhm.
We have maybe the very first question from Lala, alumna,
Mhm.
is whether you made this presentation with ThinkCell or just PowerPoint.
Yeah, I think I could do a quick answer. I'm making it with ThinkCell
Yeah,
exclusively just because it's so much faster that way.
yeah. And we have some additional questions. Maybe Dean asked about whether or not PowerPoint is the best software to use. I mean, I
Hmm.
think ThinkCell is mainly available for as a PowerPoint plugin.
Yes.
And I also think that PowerPoint at this point probably still is the industry standard, at least in a business context.
Yes,
It's also
I think exactly that. So, to your questions, first of all, ThinkCell it's currently only available in the Microsoft ecosystem, so really it only sits in PowerPoint. But I think from a device's perspective, it doesn't matter if you're using a PC or if you're using a MacBook. You could also use ThinkCell there as well. So all devices are fully supported. And then I would say that in terms of PowerPoint versus other slide making, presentation making tool, personally, I also used a lot of Google Slides back in the days when I was a student, Canva as well, which I believe is also quite popular amount, especially in the creative area. But I would say that, Christoph, exactly to your point, in a business settings, PowerPoint is still pretty much the industry standard when it comes to making presentations, or sometimes I like to call it the necessary evils that we all have to learn.
yeah. Also, I think that during the Lindau meetings, you also mainly only support either PowerPoint or PDFs, and not sometimes have Apple users who complain about that. They can't use the native Apple tools. I think that Dean has another interesting question, whether ThinkCell can always post data from Excel, or if it can
Mhm.
also pull from other sources.
Yes, absolutely. So ThinkCell can, first of all, always pull data from Excel. ThinkCell is also sitting within Excel where you can simply select the data and then pull them into PowerPoint as charts. ThinkCell also support the Tableau functions as well. I won't go into details, but just so you know that this is something that is also supported. There are step-by-step instructions on how to do it. Of course, I would say that there are limitations of how much of a data that you could pull out from Tableau, because sometimes it could be rather complex, but at least if you have it in the Tableau dashboards, you can make it into a ThinkCell chart for sure.
Thank you. I think we have some questions regarding accessibility for ThinkCell on
Mhm.
for students in an academic context. This was something you briefly mentioned earlier that I think within the academic context, I think ThinkCell
Yes.
offers free licenses.
Exactly. So we do offer free licenses to all students, staff, and faculties. So as long as you're currently affiliated with a higher education, or if we say the full name in our clause, it would be an accredited higher education institutions, you will be able to request your ThinkCell license for free.
And we have, I think, yeah, two more questions. One is on the use of ThinkCell for business model presentations, or if you also
Mhm.
may have some insights, examples of using it for complex scientific presentations.
Yeah. I think that is a great question. I would say currently, ThinkCell is super widely used in more of a business settings. Most of the chart types that you would see in a standard business presentation is supported by ThinkCell. But of course, I know that there are some more complex scientific presentations where you would probably have to build or code your own chart, which is something that I already saw a little bit. I don't know how much I could share, but in the ThinkCell update that's coming up in the next month, we definitely have made a couple of major updates to kind of cater it more to also the need for a more complex scientific presentations, in the sense that we are enabling a lot more different chart types that are available for ThinkCell, but that's kind of up and coming in the next month, I would say October, November, where we would be releasing the new ThinkCell version.
Thank you. And I think we have
Mhm.
one last ThinkCell question. Mohammed asked whether or how ThinkCell handles linked Excel data during last-minute presentation edits.
Mhm. Yeah. So I would say for that questions, I would say that, or I could, yeah, it might be easier if I just show it directly. So let's say that I'm pulling into a think cell chart over here. So let's say that this is already, let's say that this is some Excel data I have very randomly. I'm just going into a new slide. Let's say that I have some data from Excel over here. I'm selecting it, linking it to PowerPoint. So I'm pulling in is a stacked chart in my PowerPoint presentation. So what would happen is over here, you see that I currently have a chart. I'll put in some color so you can see with the data from my Excel sheets. So now that I have the chart in, I would have the options to either keep it this way. So what it looks like is exactly the one that I pull from the Excel spreadsheet, or I could also turn on the automatic update option. So for this particular option over here, what it does is that now let's say that I'm going back to my original Excel spreadsheets over here. I'll put it on the side so everybody can see. And let's say that I want to do some last minute data entry, editing, whatever. I'll just put it in here. And then as you can see over here, the data will then be updated automatically in PowerPoint. So really, I would say that you will have the options to either keep it as it is, or sometimes if you want to make sure you have the consistencies between your PowerPoint and Excel, you could also turn on the automatic update options for your chart. That way, if you want to make any kind of modifications afterwards, you can just stay in your Excel spreadsheets, changing all your data as you wish. And you will be sure that all these Excel charts that you have previously bring into a PowerPoint will be synced and updated automatically. So you don't have to worry about that anymore. I hope that answers the question. So I would say that yes, it's possible and it's also an option for you.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
And I think Lala also asked whether the academic institute's license is
Mhm.
a global or German only.
Yeah.
Um,
So I would say it is a global one. The only issues suspect that you're encountering here is that you might be the first one from your school that is requesting a license. That's why our system is not recognizing the academic email address. In that case, I mean, I would be the persons to kind of go in the back end, check if it's a legit university or not. And once we've done that kind of manual checking, behind the scene, you should be able to then get your license instantly. So I would say that we offer
Um,
it to all schools. The only thing is, if some schools are not in the system, it's just a quick extra step for us to do before we push out that license.
and should I reach out to you for that or
No, all good.
how?
I mean, if you already
Okay.
apply
Yeah,
it
I
online, yeah, yeah.
no, but it's not recognizing my email address, so I'm not sure if you would know I applied or not.
Does it say that we don't recognize it as
Yeah,
an academic
yeah.
institution? I should be able to get it, the
Okay.
email
Yeah,
address. Yeah. Mhm.
perfect.
All right. Do we have any
okay.
more question here?
I don't see any more. Some thank yous. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
But I think no more questions. So I guess it was collectively exhaustive. Uh, Thank you very much, Sibei, for this presentation. And thank you, yeah, pretty much everyone who joined also stayed for almost the entire duration. That's really great. I know a lot of you are probably still in the middle of the workday or towards the end. So thank you. Thank you to all Lindau alumni who joined. This recording will be made available in the Lindau Alumni Network afterwards, and I'll send you an email about that as well. And also, I have to mention that for the one hand, this week is very exciting for us because it's Nobel Prize announcement week. You may have already seen that we have new medicine, physics, and chemistry Nobel laureates. Some information is on our website already, and there will also be more information coming on our website. And of course, we hope that some of these new Nobel laureates will also join us next year for the 75th Lindau Nobel Laureate meeting. It's an interdisciplinary one and our anniversary, the 75th meeting. So there will be some additional events coming up for that. And alumni, keep an eye out for emails from me through the Lindau Alumni Network because we have a few things planned for next year. And now I also know how to structure the presentation slides so I can get all my ideas confirmed by the board. Uh, so thank you, Sibei, for this talk, and thank you everyone for joining in, asking questions.
All
Um,
right. Thank you all.
thank
Have a
you.
nice day then.